Men, wake up. The women you're dating today are nothing like the women your grandfather married, and if you don't understand that difference, it will destroy you. Section 1. The wake-up call. There comes a moment in every man's life when he looks around at the world and realizes something isn't adding up anymore. Dating doesn't make sense. Relationships feel heavier. Expectations feel unrealistic. And the qualities that used to matter, loyalty, teamwork, appreciation, feel almost extinct. Most men try to ignore that feeling. They tell themselves they're overthinking it. They try to adapt, to adjust, to be more patient. But eventually reality becomes too loud to ignore, and the truth is simple. Modern women do not operate the way women used to. Not emotionally, not behaviorally, not relationally, not psychologically. You're not imagining the shift. You're not being dramatic. You're not being negative. What you're noticing is real, and every man who's honest with himself feels it too. But here's why it hits so hard. Men never got an updated rule book. Men were raised under one system, while women were raised under a completely different one. You're still using the values your father and grandfather passed down: loyalty, sacrifice, responsibility, leadership, consistency. But the women you're dating were raised on a message that contradicts every one of those values. Women were taught that their feelings matter more than anything. Men were taught that their feelings don't matter at all. Women were taught that standards should rise. Men were taught that expectations should fall. Women were told they deserve the best. Men were told they should be the best, with no mistakes allowed. This mismatch is why modern relationships feel like walking through emotional landmines. Men are still playing the old partnership game. Modern women are playing something else entirely, a game built around entitlement, validation and self-focus, and most men don't understand what they're walking into. You're trying to lead a relationship with honor and stability, while she's responding based on emotions, vibes, and whatever TikTok taught her that week. You're trying to be dependable, while she's chasing excitement, ego boosts, and endless options. You're trying to build something real, while she's busy keeping score, testing your boundaries, and waiting to be impressed. You're trying to love, but modern love isn't built on effort, it's built on expectation. This script is not about blaming women, it's not about hating women, it's not about turning back time. It's about giving men a truth no one else will give them. You're not failing, you're not the problem, you're not broken, you're not asking for too much. You're simply living in a dating landscape that no longer supports the values you were raised with. And if you don't understand how the system changed, it will destroy you, emotionally, mentally, financially, spiritually. But once you understand the new reality, everything becomes clear. Your frustration makes sense. Your exhaustion makes sense. Your confusion makes sense. Your disappointment makes sense. This script is your map, your clarity, your wake-up call. You're not crazy. You're not bitter. You're simply awake in a world that wants men to stay asleep. Now let's go deeper into the generational shift that created this crisis in the first place. Section 2. The generational shift. Nobody prepared men for. To understand why modern relationships feel so unstable, you have to understand the generational shift that created this mess. Because the truth is, men and women were not raised in the same world, not even close. Your grandfather married a woman shaped by a culture of survival. She grew up watching her parents work with their hands, stretch budgets, solve problems, and rely on each other. Contribution wasn't optional, it was life. She learned how to cook because the family needed to eat, how to clean because the home needed structure, how to manage emotions because drama made life harder, how to support her man because partnership made survival possible. These weren't gender roles, these were life skills. Now fast forward to today. Most modern women were raised in a world where comfort was assumed, responsibility was optional, independence was glamorized, standards were inflated, contribution was minimized, accountability was rejected. They were taught to focus on themselves first, second, and third, and if a relationship suffers because of that, it's the man's job to fix it. They grew up hearing, "You deserve the world," "Never settle," "A man should do everything," "If you're unhappy, it's his fault." Validation was constant, accountability was non-existent, expectations were limitless. If life was difficult, someone else was to blame. If emotions were chaotic, others had to adapt. If relationships felt unstable, the man wasn't doing enough. Meanwhile, men grew up under completely opposite programming. Men were taught, work hard, take responsibility, don't complain, provide stability, be dependable, be strong, be the rock, don't show weakness. So what happens when a woman raised on entitlement meets a man raised on duty? A disaster. She's taught that everything she feels is valid. He's taught to ignore everything he feels. She's taught that men should bring value. He's taught that he isn't valuable until he brings something. She's told her worth is automatic. He's told his worth must be earned, and that creates the core imbalance. Women were encouraged to demand more. Men were pressured to accept less. Older generations built relationships on cooperation. Today's culture builds relationships on competition. Older women brought effort. Modern women bring expectations. Older women wanted teamwork. Modern women want someone who makes their life easier without requiring anything from them. Older women believed in partnership. Modern women believe in personal comfort. And here's the painful truth. Men are still judged by traditional standards, while women judge themselves by modern ones. Men must be providers, but women don't want to be supporters. Men must lead, but women resent being led. Men must be solid, but women can be chaotic. Men must sacrifice, but women can follow their feelings. It's a one-way street with two sets of rules, and men are expected to pretend that's fair. This generational shift is why most men feel blindsided. It's why relationships feel heavier. It's why dating feels lopsided. It's why you're exhausted despite doing everything right. You're living in a world where men are expected to keep the old responsibilities, while women are encouraged to abandon theirs. That imbalance is the foundation for everything you're experiencing. Now let's go deeper into the new relationship dynamic men are forced to navigate. Section 3. The new dynamic: high demands, low contribution. Modern relationships run on a painful imbalance. Men are expected to give more, while women feel entitled to give less. You see it everywhere. Women expect leadership, emotional support, financial security, protection, stability, consistency, initiative, all the traditional masculine responsibilities, but reject the traditional feminine contributions that balance those responsibilities out. This isn't about cooking or cleaning. This is about effort, accountability, and reciprocity. A modern man must plan the dates, pay for the dates, lead every conversation, fix every emotional issue, stay patient through mood swings, work like a machine, never break down, never show weakness, always be on. Meanwhile, the woman often brings feelings, preferences, expectations, standards, demands, and calls it enough. Emotional imbalance is one of the biggest problems. A modern woman believes every emotion she feels is automatically valid, even if it changes every hour. But when a man expresses emotion, he's cold, controlling, or too sensitive. Her storms matter. Your storms are an inconvenience. There's also the responsibility gap. She wants you to lead, but gets offended when you take charge. She wants a provider, but doesn't want to contribute. She wants emotional safety, but creates emotional chaos. She wants commitment, but rejects accountability. Worst of all, appreciation has evaporated. Your effort is expected, not valued. Your sacrifices are invisible. Your consistency is the bare minimum. Men used to be admired for being dependable. Now they're told dependability isn't special. It's just what a man should do. So men give more, receive less, and wonder why the relationship feels exhausting. You're not crazy, you're not weak, you're not failing. You're operating in a system where the rules are rigged against you. And once you see the imbalance clearly, everything that's been draining you starts to make sense. If this is hitting you hard, do 3 things right now. Like the video, drop a comment and hit subscribe. Your engagement pushes this message to more men who need it. Section 4. The hidden cost men pay. Men don't collapse suddenly. They collapse slowly. One disappointment, one argument, one ignored effort at a time. The hidden cost begins with emotional exhaustion. You handle her moods, her outbursts, her insecurities, her stress, but nobody handles yours. You're forced to be strong every day, even on the days you're breaking inside. Then comes the slow erosion of self-respect. You tolerate disrespect to avoid conflict. You accept unfair blame because you were trained to be the bigger person. You shrink yourself so she feels bigger. You carry the emotional weight so she feels lighter. And quietly you begin losing pieces of yourself. Burnout follows, not the loud kind, but the silent kind. You become distant, not because you don't care, but because you're empty. She complains that you changed, but she never asks why. Resentment grows quietly. Not anger, just sadness. Sadness from realizing your effort doesn't matter. Sadness from realizing appreciation isn't coming. Sadness from realizing you're giving more than you're ever going to receive. Then comes the identity collapse. You start asking yourself, am I the problem? Is wanting peace too much? Why do I feel guilty asking for basics? This is the psychological trap most men fall into, blaming themselves for imbalance someone else created. Worse, when a man finally expresses how he feels, he gets blamed again. You're too emotional, you're overreacting, you're not supportive enough. You always make it about you. So he shuts down to survive. He stops talking, he stops asking, he stops expecting, he stops hoping. This is the real cost men pay in modern relationships. the cost of trying to love someone who mistakes your strength for endless capacity. And once you reach this stage, something inside you begins to shift. Section 5. Why men stay even when they're drained. People think men leave too easily. Reality, men stay far longer than they should. Why? Because men were trained to endure, not escape. You grew up hearing, be strong, handle it, don't quit. So when a relationship becomes difficult, you don't see it as a sign to leave. You see it as a problem to fix. You stay because you believe effort will create improvement, because you believe sacrifice leads to stability, because you believe leaving makes you a failure. Another reason men stay, the fear of starting over. Breakups hit men differently. Women detach emotionally long before the relationship ends. Men detach after, when the silence hits, when the routines fade, when the home feels cold. You stay because you're scared of the emptiness that comes after. Men also stay because they don't want to hurt someone they care about, even if she's hurting them. Men would rather break internally than be the one who walked away. And men stay because they blame themselves. If she's unhappy, you think you failed. If she's angry, you think you caused it. If she's distant, you think you should change. You take responsibility for everything, and she takes responsibility for nothing. But the most painful reason men stay, you're in love with who she used to be, the sweet version, the supportive version, the appreciative version. You're holding on to memories, not her current reality. And that keeps you trapped, hoping the old her will return. But she doesn't. And slowly you begin to realize she's not coming back. Section 6. The turning point. Men don't leave when they're angry. Men leave when they go numb. The real breaking point is quiet. It's the moment you tell yourself, this will never get better. That realization changes everything. The first sign is silence. When a man stops arguing, stops debating, stops trying to fix things, he's already gone emotionally. He's not calm, he's resigned. He knows nothing he says will change anything. Then comes the painful clarity. You realize you're not being loved, you're being used. You see the pattern. Your effort is expected. Your efforts is expected. Your sacrifice is invisible. Your feelings are dismissed. Your needs are inconvenient. Your boundaries are disrespectful to her. Your exhaustion is interpreted as attitude. And there it is, the truth you avoided. She doesn't love you for you. She loves the comfort you provide. Once that clicks, something inside you detaches. You realize her respect is gone, and without respect, love cannot survive. Then comes the emotional shutdown. You stop trying to impress her. You stop trying to fix things. You stop trying to win her back. Not because you don't care, but because you finally understand your effort will never be enough for someone who has endless expectations. The turning point is when you rediscover something you forgot. You deserve peace. And once a man tastes peace, even for a moment, he realizes he can't go back to emotional chaos. That's when he truly wakes up. That's when he begins reclaiming himself. That's when he quietly prepares to leave. Section 7. The rebuild. When a man wakes up, he doesn't become colder, he becomes clearer. The first thing he restores is peace. He stops tolerating emotional drama. He stops absorbing someone else's storms. He refuses to sacrifice himself for temporary harmony. Then he rediscovers who he was before the relationship drained him. His goals, his passion, his strength, his hobbies, his ambition, his confidence. Piece by piece, he rebuilds himself. Next, he starts withdrawing energy from the wrong places. No more chasing approval. No more begging for appreciation. No more proving his worth to someone who never valued it. Boundaries become his new language. He says no without guilt. He enforces standards without fear. He protects his emotional space like his life depends on it. Because it does. He starts judging by actions instead of promises. Consistency matters more than charm. Effort matters more than excitement. Emotional maturity matters more than beauty. And finally, he learns to walk away. Not angrily, not dramatically, just peacefully. Because a man who knows his worth doesn't stay where he's disrespected. He becomes more selective, more disciplined, more grounded, more masculine, more himself. And ironically, that's when he becomes the most attractive he has ever been. But this time, he doesn't choose based on chemistry. He chooses based on character. He knows what chaos cost him. He knows what peace feels like, and he'll never trade peace for chaos again. The final truth? A man doesn't need a perfect woman. He just needs a woman who respects him, appreciates him, and brings peace to his life. And once he wakes up, he never settles for less again. Conclusion. At the end of the day, every man reaches a moment where he has to choose, keep sacrificing himself for a relationship that drains him, or finally step into a life built on peace, clarity, and self-respect. Modern dating won't get easier, the expectations won't shrink, the imbalance won't magically fix itself, but you can change. You can wake up, you can set standards, You can become the kind of man who protects his time, his energy, his heart, because he finally understands his worth. There is nothing weak about wanting peace. There is nothing toxic about wanting respect. There is nothing wrong with wanting a woman who actually contributes to your life instead of consuming it. Remember this: a man who knows his value becomes unstoppable. A man who protects his peace becomes untouchable. A man who walks away from chaos becomes powerful. And once you rise into that version of yourself, you'll never settle for less again. If this message hit you in the chest, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with another man who needs to hear the truth. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell your story. Tell us when you woke up, because the more men speak up, the more men finally rise. And if you want more brutally honest breakdowns like this, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and join the men who refuse to live blind. Wake up, step up, stay sharp. The world changed. It's time men did too.